All right, let's start off with our first big story. The crisis rocking the Lagos State chapter of the Nigerian Medical Association is far from over, as two different chairmen are laying claims to the leadership position of the group.
Both chairmen have been sworn in at different locations. Now, health experts and groups are worried that the development will have a negative effect on healthcare delivery. Oluwatoyin Abo tells us more.
The internal wrangling started about 2 weeks ago when some doctors under the aegis of the Medical Guild, a body affiliated to NMA, held an election in the premises of the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. Abandoning the election, earlier held by the incumbent NMA chairman, Dr. Tope Ojo, at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. The breakaway faction, led by Dr. Olumiwa Odushote, accused the Tope Ojo group of irregularities in the election. They claimed that the only way to address such shortcomings was to conduct a transparent election as advised by the national body.
Some of our colleagues have decided not only to go another way from the association, but have decided to flagrantly disobey the national body. We are committed to reconciling everybody under the umbrella of the Nigerian Medical Association.
As the chairman of the
During the swearing-in ceremony of the new chairman, Dr. Olubunmi Omojowolo, the Ojo-led group said members of the Odushote faction were not qualified to take part in the election after failing to pay their annual dues up to date. They accused the Odushote faction of causing confusion within the ranks of the Lagos NMA.
You could have people that will be rancorous. You may not be able to prevent that. But one thing that must be said straight is that Nigerian Medical Association Lagos State is intact.
Former president of the association, Dr. Jojo Kara, explained why he thinks the Ojo-led NMA is the authentic group.
This document has satisfied the constitutional requirement for this AGM and election. And I therefore say that if there are aggrieved groups who do not agree with this, we should have been notified earlier than now. I have never received any other notice other than the one I got a few days ago, which clearly was an infringement on the rules and regulations of the association.
Okara, however, called on the Odushote group to join hands with the new NMA chairman to move the association forward, pointing out that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Oluwatoyin Abo, TVC News, Lagos.
All right, joining us in the studio now is Dr. Olubunmi Omojowolo. Dr. Olubunmi is one of the factional chairmen of the NMA. Let me put it that way for now so we can understand this. It's good to have you in the studio right now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Now, in one of your statements, as reported there, you said that the Dr. Odushote's faction is not qualified to contest for election. Can you give us an understanding of that?
Well, thank you very much. The statement you just made now was, I didn't make that statement.
Okay.
So it was made by someone else.
Oh, I see.
But let me just start by saying that Lagos NMA is a family. And in a family, there are bound to be disagreements and misunderstanding. And there are mechanisms by which those misunderstandings are resolved. There are internal mechanisms of resolving them. And I believe that Lagos NMA will come out stronger of this issue. We just have to look at the internal mechanism and make sure that the issues are resolved. So I am not here to castigate anybody, but what I want to say is that as long as we follow the constitution of the association, we have the NMA constitution and we have rules and regulations of the state branch. As long as we follow this to the letter, there won't be any problem.
Okay, if you will, for our own benefit and of course more importantly the benefit of our viewers, exactly what are the requirements? What does the constitution say at the national level and indeed the state level, which is what concerns you?
Yeah, thank you very much. The constitution is very clear about the number of weeks required to advertise annual general meeting stroke elections. It is clearly stated. The National Constitution stipulates 12 weeks. The rules and regulations of the state stipulate 8 weeks. So, and the process of the election that was conducted at the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, met that requirement of the Constitution because it was advertised 8 weeks. And the Constitution also brought that in to prevent this kind of scenario, because at the point the venue was being announced, the identity of the contestants were not known. So nobody knew who was going to contest for any post. And the venue has been announced 8 weeks before the election. Now, for some people to now say that 2 days to the election they are announcing their own venue, well, that interpretation is left for the relevant authority to come in and interpret. The other issue is that who has the power to dissolve the council? After the returning officer is appointed at the annual general meeting, it is only the chairman of the association that has the power to dissolve the council.
The chairman at the federal level? Or
no, at the state level.
Okay.
At the state level. And at least there is no controversy about who the former chairman of the state was, Dr. Tokpe Ojo. He is the only one that has the constitutional power to dissolve the council. And in the meeting we had at CMUL, he was there with some other member of his ESCO, and he performed his statutory duty. And I was sworn in properly as the elected NMA chairman, and I have the medallion of office with me here to show that we follow the process, we follow the normal process. So, but I believe that as this is an issue, and as an association, we just need to fashion a way forward peacefully. I believe I am open to peaceful resolution of the crisis. So, and I believe we'll come out stronger of this as an association.
Okay. Now, we'll come to this to have a better understanding, but let's give our viewers some perspective to this. Now, the Nigerian Medical Association has 36 state branches and the Federal Capital Territory, with 70% of doctors in urban areas, while only 30% reside in rural areas.
The origin of the Nigerian Medical Association dates back to 1951, when the British Medical Association tried to form a branch in Nigeria. The NMA became an association of its own in 1960.
Now, the association seeks to address problems faced by doctors in the country in terms of welfare. The NMA also tries to find solutions to disagreement among members. Now, just to also let you know that we'll also be having Dr. Olumuyiwa Odushote in the house subsequently as we get along, so we can have a balanced discussion for people to understand what this is all about.
Of course, Odushote is the other factional chairman of the NMA right here in Lagos.
Now, let's have this. You talked about the issue of mechanism within the system for resolution. Can you give us an idea of what these mechanisms are?
Yeah, thank you very much. The Constitution stipulates those mechanisms. Now, the mechanisms of resolution of crisis includes the National Officer Committee and the National Executive Council. So that is the national body. And a meeting of the National Executive Council is going to hold, I think, in like 2 weeks' time, and the issue will be debated there. Now, I think at this point, we need to concentrate NMA Lagos. We have a very pivotal role to play in the issue of infant and maternal mortality in Lagos, in the issue of people with disabilities, in the issue of mental health. These are the areas we need to concentrate on. And we are working to make sure that we make impact in those areas. And I just feel that this is a distraction to most of us. And I believe that the issue will be resolved amicably.
Yeah,
we really do hope so.
Yeah, we look forward to that resolution. But you talked about these mechanisms. We certainly would like to know what these mechanisms for resolution of conflicts like this are concerned. We all also know that doctors have an enormous challenge on their hands with enormous obligation and responsibility. But when it comes to issues of politics and leadership and interests like this, certainly we want to know what mechanisms are there.
Thank you very much. As I've said earlier, as long as we follow the dictates of the Constitution, we will not enter into this kind of problems. And the Constitution stipulates the mechanisms that can be used to resolve crises like this. And some of the mechanisms involve intervention or effort by the National Officer Committee to resolve the issue. And then we have the National Executive Council. And also we have committee of past presidents of the association. These are people of, these are noblemen and women that have the role to play in resolving this crisis. So the association has its own mechanism by which crises like this or issues like this can be resolved.
And you are insisting that you have followed this mechanism,
yes,
to the letter.
Yeah.
Are there other underlying factors that may have led to a professional and a really, really serious body like yours, a group of medical doctors who, like you said, are bothered about the health and the well-being of the populace?
Yes.
Whether it's in mental health and the other areas that you've just listed. Are there underlying factors that have led to this? Because
yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So tell us exactly what those things are that have led us to where your NMA Lagos now has two factional chairmen.
Well, there are a lot of underlying factors, but I want to say that the crisis, or the so-called crisis, is being fueled by selfish interests and people that have vendetta against some other people. So I believe that if people can stick by the dictates of this constitution, we are not going to have this crisis.
Selfish interests on whose
Now,
part?
one of the issues is that we know that the association, that's the Lagos State branch, will be hosting the secretariat of the national NMA in 2018. So to me, I think that is one of the issues creating a lot of entropy in the system that is causing some of these misunderstandings. So that's as much as I can say for now. Yeah.
Okay, now Odushote claims he's ready to reconcile members of your faction. He's obviously talking, it looks like he's talking from a position of, is it superiority, or he believes, just like yourself, that he is the rightful chairman. Are you willing to make peace with him, and what would it take to achieve peace?
Well, the truth is that I should be the one saying that I want to reconcile the NMA Lagos. And I'm ready to do that reconciliation. I'm a man of peace, and I don't believe that this is a do or die affair. I am ready to reconcile. As I've said earlier, wherever you take the matter to, for anybody that is objective and fair and just, the only election that is recognized by this constitution is the election that brought me in as the chairman of Lagos State NMA.
All right. Now, when you say you're ready to reconcile, and if, for instance, if National NMA and all of the mechanism you talked about decide to sit two of you together and say, what will you give off for resolution? What would that be?
Well, when we get there, we will all table our case and we talk. It's a discussion, and whatever the NEC decide to come up with, we will abide by it. The other issue is that for us to seek interpretation, because the NEC and the Committee of Past Presidents also interprets the Constitution, but there's also an option of seeking interpretation from the Court of Law. However, we are not interested in going that far, because the constitution of the association is also clear about procedures that must be followed before you can seek that kind of interpretation from the Court of Law.
All right, but so far, has there been a move by the National NMA wading into the crisis in the local chapter of Lagos?
Yes, exactly. I have been in contact with the president of NMA, Professor Grima, and also with the Secretary General, Dr. Sununu. I'm sure the other faction has also been in contact with him, and he has assured us that the issue will be adequately looked into during the National Executive Council meeting organization holding in Enugu in about 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, Dr. Olubomi Omojowolo, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right now, I'm glad to also let you know that we have Professor Michael Gurima, the National President of the Nigerian Medical Association, joining us on phone from Abuja right now. Professor, it's good to have you on the program right now. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Now, you are very aware of the crisis, leadership crisis in Lagos State chapter of the NMA. Generally, can you give us an idea of what the national NMA is trying to do to resolve the crisis there?
Yeah, thank you. In the first instance, we attempted to prevent this crisis before it comes. Therefore, we set up a two-man committee to wade into the crisis because we had petitions, up to 5 contestants sending petitions to the national body to look into the crisis. They complained about the leadership of NMA, Lagos branch, and we said, okay, we'll look into it. So we got there, and the committee submitted their report after making some findings. The findings are that the leadership was not carrying everybody along. 2, that venue of elections were not publicized. And 3, there are other issues which bordered on how the leadership was run. The NMA National, under my leadership, now ask the 2 factions or the multiple factions coming up to go for the line of peace. And how do we go about it? We said those who have been disallowed not to pay dues because of time lag should be allowed to pay their dues 24 hours before the election. And if people are complaining that certain places are not suitable for election from both sides, we said the chairman of Lagos State then should find a neutral ground, and we specifically mentioned those places that should not be used for election. But as we had it, elections were conducted by 2 factions. One of the factions had it in prohibited areas, permitted to use that. And the others went for the so-called neutral place. But of course, the whole house were not together. Now that we have 2 factions, 2 leadership, the National Officers Committee, which is standing in as the national neck of the association, is telling them, look, the elders are there, the 2 factions are there, let the elders and the past leaders look into the crisis. We have other internal mechanisms to resolve crisis. And as we are speaking, we cannot recognize the 2 factions. Therefore, the NEC, which is going to hold in 2 or 3 weeks' time in Enugu, is going to finally decide on the way forward. Whether we should come up with a caretaker committee to handle the issue, which is a provisional provision, or we accept one of the factions, depending on the superior argument at the neck, at the floor of the neck. Thank you.
Okay, it's interesting you say that right now you cannot recognize the 2 factions. Like they say, nature abhors a vacuum. Yes, indeed, there will be this meeting in Enugu. These 2 parties are laying claims to the position of the chairman of Lagos NMA. And according to our first guest, Dr. Omojowolo, he insists that he has followed the due process and he's the one who has been recognized by the NMA to head or to chair the association for the next 2 years. Now, what exactly does the Constitution say, if you will, in terms of the emergence or how the chairman of a state state chapter actually, can emerge. And what, now that you said that you would not recognize any of the two factions, what happens next?
Of course. The next issue is... Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Clearly. Yeah, the next issue is that right now we have two factions. Locally, those factions know how to conduct their business. But constitutionally, the NEC will have the final say on what to do with those two factions. This is the issue. But right now, there are mechanisms on ground, on past leaders, elders in the state, to intervene, and they are intervening. I'm receiving reports that they are calling them for meetings.
All right, Professor Ogirima, as it is right now, if I have to deduce something from there, the two factions are not recognized, and by constitution, the former NMA chairman headed by Dr. Ojo has been dissolved. So who is in charge of NMA Lagos right now?
The national is controlling affairs.
Okay, that's interesting to know. That means, of course, that patients, Lagosians should not have to worry about the state of affairs in the health sector while, the two elephants, as it were, are fighting. All right, we're going out right now on TVC Entertainment, but viewers there can continue with TVC Breakfast on TVC Nigeria on Concert Channel 190, DSTV 418.
You can also watch go on GoTV 45 and ACTV 510.
Right.
Well, it's good to have you join us still on TVC Breakfast. We're looking at the crisis, the leadership crisis in Dr. Olubunmi Omojowolo, and we were speaking with the national president of the Nigerian Medical Association, Professor Mike Ogirima. Professor Mike, thank you very much for joining us on TVC News. Thank you. I have to let you go right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, joining us in the studio is the factional vice chairman of the NMA in Lagos, Dr. Sodipo Olujimi. It's good to have you in the studio.
It's nice to be here. Thank
Welcome.
you. Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Now, we just had Dr. Olubunmi, Dr. Omojowolo in the studio just a few minutes ago, and he said that when it comes to the specification of the Constitution, he abided by all the steps and emerged as the substantive chairman. And you also laying claim to the same seat of the chairman. So who do we recognize here as the case may be? Can you give us an idea of this?
Thank you very much. And I want to appreciate TVC for taking out this time to try and get a solution to the problem. What had happened was the Constitution had been manipulated. There's a process in place to choose the venues for our annual general meetings and our elections. And that process usually involves the chairman interacting not just by himself, because we have over 6,000 doctors in Lagos State who are actively practicing. He interacts with his state officers committee, who are other members of his ESCO, and there are about 10 of them. From there, they suggest a venue. And that venue is subsequently brought to a bigger body, which we call the State Executive Council meeting, which comprises of members from different groups. I mean, we have doctors working for private institutions, we have doctors working for public institutions, which could be federal or state. And at that level, we now take a decision on the venue. Now, what happened was the chairman suddenly woke up and took a decision, that's the immediate past chairman, and just chose a venue which was going to favor certain candidates. And as the national president has said, we immediately raised an alarm and informed the national body that we are medical doctors and our role as Nigerian Medical Association is advocacy for doctors and patients' rights and policy making. We're not politicians. So we need somebody to come in and just help us straighten out the issue. And as the national president said, a two-man committee was set up, which came to Lagos, heard both sides, deliberated. I mean, we deliberated for long hours that we could have spent probably doing more productive things for the health profession. And subsequently, the suggestion was that for a fair play, let's just have a neutral venue. And that was subsequently done. Secondly, the person constituted by the Constitution to issue the notice of venues is the secretary, not the chairman. But we had a situation where the chairman suddenly started sending out messages, and we raised an alarm and said, sir, you are the chairman, you are supposed to be like a unifying factor for everybody. You give instructions. If those instructions could not be followed, you give another person. That's why there are 10 ESCO members, so that in case one person is indisposed for whatever reason, but he didn't follow that, he suddenly just started issuing out some of these directives. And that is one of the things that caused this unnecessary crisis. We have been so passionate about avoiding any form of rancor or anything that would affect the confidence of our patients in the healthcare sector. And that's why, to avoid that, we called in the national body. And when the national body said, get a neutral venue, we, along with hundreds of doctors, were able to secure the venue that was used for the last election, which is the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. And we had a rancor-free election. This election finished by 5 p.m., as is normally the time, so that everybody can wait and hear the results. And by 8-9, we already knew who the chairman was.
So did you then carry along the Omo Jowolo side of, the divide in choosing this neutral venue? Did they show up at the venue?
Yes. Now, what happens is we look at the way the NMA is structured, because we're over 6,000 doctors. It's virtually impossible to get everybody. So we have representatives of every doctor, every group. And we normally have what we call a state executive council meeting. Now, what happened was immediately the information came from the national body that a neutral venue had been mandated. Of course, the chairman, the immediate past chairman, called this SEC meeting, State Executive Council meeting, where representatives were there. And he initially feigned ignorance of such a directive, but I'm happy that the national president has clarified that for us. And by the time we informed him at that meeting, where all of us were present, he still refused to change his mind or make any move. Now, people have quoted the Constitution, but I think the problem we've had is in the interpretation of this Constitution. Because if, for example, we say this is a boy, somebody may interpret it now to mean this is a boy, girl, or whatever. So the problem we've had is in that interpretation. And that's why we were so eager to get the national body involved and informed, because they are the ones to clarify such issues.
But how do you even interpret a constitution that you just said here has been manipulated, and manipulated by whom?
It was manipulated by the immediate past chairman. And when I say manipulation, as I said, that is looking at a statement that's been made and twisting the words of that statement.
That's interpreting it.
Interpreting is where the problem comes in. The words are very clear, but the interpretation is where we've been having a lot of issues with.
Okay, now the Professor Girima said that there's going to be a NEC meeting in Enugu, just as also Dr. Mojawolo said that earlier on, and at that meeting there'll be a move to reconcile. Now, if you said you're ready to reconcile, Dr. Mojawolo earlier said he's also ready for resolution, as the case may be. If you go to the resolution table, what will be your arguments on that table? What would you be ready to give off as a way of shifting ground for a resolution?
Well, first and foremost, even before getting to the National Executive Council meeting, ideally, we have other mechanisms in Lagos State, which unfortunately some of them had failed. But especially, as Professor Ogirima said, we have the elders. We have people that have been past chairmen. We have our very elderly colleagues, professors, and other senior colleagues who should play a role. Unfortunately, they were also alienated. And that's why many of them stayed away from this whole process and have been advising on the sidelines. And of course, they are still trying to talk to us. Now, on what we want, I've tried to, and that's been our own argument. We're not a political party. This is not an APC, PDP
because it's looking
sharing
like
some political office.
Already.
No. What we are most concerned about is we need to carry every doctor along. If you noted one thing that was said, part of the reason why we wrote that petition is we have over 6,000 doctors. A large number of us work for the private side. Some of us work for the state. Some of us work for the federal. Everybody has to have a sense of belonging if we are going to deliver healthcare dividends to the people. Now, what had happened was some persons have constituted themselves into decision makers as against allowing the ordinary doctor to really, because the ordinary doctor is really frustrated by what is going on, because they have been calling and inundating us with calls that must it get to this level where we're arguing within ourselves. So whatever the members want is where we are ready to shift ground. In fact, one of our suggestions before the election was, let's call a general meeting. And in fact, an emergency general meeting was called where such issues would have been trashed out, because no matter what the Constitution says, once the members say this is what we want, I mean, the Constitution is meant for the members, that would have been trashed out. Unfortunately, again, the chairman prevented such.
Now, talk to us quickly, please, about the issue of fragmentation as far as private doctors are concerned. You just broached on it now.
Yes.
In what way are private doctors left out of
yes.
the scheme of affairs or scheme of things
well,
in Lagos?
The problem we've had is we all face different challenges as doctors. If I work for a public institution, I'm probably just interested in working and collecting my salary. For a private doctor, they are interested in policies that could allow their hospitals to thrive and also allow them to be able to impact healthcare. Now, what had happened over the years is most times when decisions are being made, they are left out. For example, when you choose a venue and you choose it in a public institution, you choose the election to hold during working hours where, if I'm a doctor working in that public institution, for example, in Lutz, I can be seeing my patients, step out, go and register to vote, come back, continue seeing my patients, step back and go and vote. But somebody that has to leave his private hospital and come and spend 6 hours, who covers that institution? So they've been left out. And they are even part of a group that we feel that if we're going to take healthcare delivery in this state forward, we all must work together. And that's why our own take is, let's allow the members to really have their say, number one. Then we're happy that the national body has come in finally. We are going to also go to the NEC. But even before that, we are still discussing, we are still interacting. We don't want this. There's already some loss of confidence in the healthcare sector. We can't even allow this to go a day further. And that's been our own appeal. And the appeal of my chairman, who unfortunately due to an emergency is not here, but that's been his own appeal that we need to unify the house, because the average doctor is not interested in this whole mess. Yes,
okay.
The average patient is also not interested.
We'll have to say thank you so much. Vice Chairman of the Odushote faction of the NMA Lagos State, Dr. Shodipo Olujimi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
And we hope this is sorted out as quickly as possible.
I also hope so too.